country. He is a true white power. White power.
White power is creating hate where at first there was none. From Chinese gunpowder, the invention of the gun. From ancient Egypt, still civilization, then use miseducation to rewrite creation. De-Africanize the Sphinx and rewrite his facing. Displace the racing, be quite complacent. We living in the real District 9. Master race convince other people to dehumanize. White power is against world peace. They'd rather cut the world in pieces. Let every European nation make colonies after natives defeated. Monopolize every natural resource and bleed it. White power is not freedom. White power is the semen that implies dark-skinned people inferior to light people. The same demon that conquered and raped other cultures got the children of the rapists thinking they better than their brothers. It's all around the world from America to the outback. White power prefers we be without black. I got nothing but love for my Latinos. For Puerto Rico, why deny your heritage is Negro? White power is Spain, conquering Asians, rename Filipinos. Teach them to mistreat the indigenous, they call negritos. But they really the same people. If you darker, you less equal. So you got lighter skinned Indians treated better than the darker. Same thing, Brazil, Mexico, Jakarta. Black Cubans or so-called just Cuban. When genetically you the same race and we all just human. White power is fooling you and idolizing itself. Makes you a second-class citizen while it takes your wealth. White power is self-hate and Stockholm Syndrome. So as I knock on your dome, you are not home.
Perception is the power that racial hatred devours. Cowards rewrote the history that is ours. Conquest is the sweet smell of a poisonous flower. The slave master is the savage in the final hour. Perception is what white power relies on. Racial division, the system to build lies on. There is only one human race that exists. I reclaim the past when I raise my fist.
White power is 41 million blacks trying to escape the ghetto. Crabs in the barrel to push back pedals. Youngsters blast metal for iced out bezels. 13-year-old girls in 6-inch stilettos. In every exotic car brand of upscale apparel. But barely reading right on the 5th grade level. Blame they condition on some mythological devil. With red skin, 2 horns and a pitchfork. 400 years, we bottom of the food chain. Think white power did it on accident? Use a new slave. White power prefers the middle class bear the brunt of the economy. Pay lower wages to women and minorities. Create COINTELPRO, Jim Crow. Send police dogs on children cause we march for equality. It's the war on crime, the war on terror. White supremacists who refuse to look in the mirror. White power instigates black power and brown pride. Locks them in prison to make sure that they collide. Says the inner city ignorant, but they the ones who taught us. Says go back to Africa when they the ones who brought us. White power wants more walls and more border patrol. But white power stole the Southwest from Mexico. Hate immigrants, but they all immigrated from Europe. Neo-Nazis claiming they blood the purest. A false racial superiority, false sense of purity. Cause all mankind came from little African pygmies. So every genetic possibility is in me. Blue eyes, blonde hair, Aryan, Asian, Syrian, Armenian. But in the end, white power taught the world to despise the black man. But still want his bitch with full lips, round ass, and a nice tan. Nice plan. See, white power is conflicted. It hates who it loves, it imitates who it denigrates to escape who it was. Took our African religions in plain sight, man. By the 1500s, Jesus Christ became a white man. And when it suits his goal, have you on the front line fighting. White power's the MC who keeps switching his hype, man. Sri Lanka versus India, Tutsi versus Hutu, Palestinian versus Jew, nigga, you too.
Perception is the power that racial hatred devours. Cowards rewrote the history that is ours. Conquest is the sweet smell of a poisonous flower. The slave master is the savage in the final hour. Perception, that's what white power relies on. War's the foundation, capitalism lies on. The battlefield, the American soldier dies on. From Basra, Kandahar, Mogadishu to Saigon.
The hip hop writer is a creator composing understanding words of cultured brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly and uses his ears to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God stepping in score, Sunez, Allah, a.k.a. S.STREET. Hello. And we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media, where every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. This show, for those tuning in infrequently, never, first time, is about my element of hip-hop, the writer of art on art and science on music, the only show in history on the hip-hop writer element that I, a veteran of over 25 years, helped pioneer. Helped pioneer in a way that, like I always say, merge the most two important elements to make something an element of hip-hop. Its necessity as expression and its reality as defining and helping to direct the integrity, the principles, the ideals of the culture itself. So on one side, it had to be useful, absolutely. The journalism, the science on music, giving details about the music, trying to look through the perspective, finding those histories of these artists, giving you these histories, giving perspective. An album changes so much when you hear it. But it changes even more so when you know the way that it was made. And that counts. That really counts. Now, the other aspect is also the art on art, right? As my phone is just going nuts here, right? Is the art on art. It could never be an element if it wasn't creative, and as we look on the official release event for my new book, The Filtered Reel, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance, one of the things is that what's incredible about it all is that when I started to write back in about, I think this was in college around 1994, I started to write. The first piece I ever wrote was the 3 R's that feed and starve hip-hop. And the 3 R's were R&B, it was R&B, radio, and record labels. The 3 R's that feed and starve hip-hop, right? And it was my first piece, though, so they gave me free reign. And I must have wrote like 2,000 words on it, you know what I mean? I remember starting, quoting quotes from Organized Confusion's Stress song, because they had some songs about the radio and stuff, dissing the radio and playing the same thing every day, right? They were saying that back in 94. But a lot of things I started to do that people didn't do anymore. I know this because the people that were at the magazines were asking me if they could use that. And one of them was like using quotes from songs to lead off themes, And I thought, I immediately went into the next year. This is my first year writing anything, ever having anything published. And in the beginning of 1995, I was like, I'm not really a part of the culture. People are respecting what I'm writing because it's representing the culture. But I'm not part of the culture. So I thought to myself, it can be an element of hip-hop if it's creative in some way. Now, back then, when I was writing, the way I was writing creatively, but separate from the pieces about music. So I'd write reviews and pieces about music, and then I would have separate pieces that were creative works. So I was making the writer itself a creative force. So I'd have like maybe a review about De La Soul Stakes is High, right? And then I would have a review about a opinionated piece about something that's going on in the music. But then I would write some type of creative piece that would be hip hop. It would have the way I speak. It would have the essence in it. It would be hip hop, but it would be poetic. It would be It would be some type of poem, or be. In the beginning, I was really just writing poetic prose. I wasn't really writing poetry. But the reason I started to do that, what I started to realize was, I was quoting other MCs and their lines to spark certain essays. And I realized that the essay had itself a hip hop essence because of those quotes. Not because they were quotes just from hip hop songs, right? But because the quotes itself were artistic. So then I realized, what if I was just doing that? What if I developed in this way? And eventually all these years led to this decade where I'm covering the music that to me has really been, I can't call it anything else but what I call it, a renaissance that has gone unseen, because the dark ages of the 2000s has made pop such a standard. I'm going to say this, and it's kind of a hot take, but not really, not really. None of my takes are just hot takes. None of the worst music that you hear in this decade, worst music, meaning music that has no standard of skills that we've ever had before, no standards at all. Stripping down the music, and even past saying we're just going old school, so we use 808s horribly. Past the point of using old school methods in a worse way, where a less skilled way, which would be a degradation, and you're going down. So it's not really evolution, it's an excuse, it's a cop out, it's a way to justify. But music that really isn't elevating on any type of principle, and it leaves it up to the leech journalist, the leeches out of the leech artist, bloodsucking the culture, to try to justify all this stuff, And I'm going to get into this more, because this is what this a lot of this episode is really about. So some of these ideas are peeking out right now as I'm building here. But I'm really trying to build on some of the history that led up to me writing these type of works and leading up to this book that I'm releasing officially next Friday, here at S.STREET Media Studios, right? Next week here, 1639 Center Street, right here, from 7 to 10. It's a free event, If you come, learn about the book. I'll read excerpts, right? I have a speaker who's blessing me to honor and talk about the career I've had, Day-Sun, who I've been in the trenches with since I've known him in these hip hop fields, and all you got to do is, if you want, you spend money on the book, If not, you learn a little bit about the book, But when I started to write, I never was able to get a platform where I could really go in, really dissect the music, really extend it. And then on the other side, a lot of my pieces for major magazines, Double XL, I've had Double XL editors really be in a conundrum trying to edit my pieces. I've had other editors not being able to edit down my pieces. In the beginning, I never knew how to edit them down. I didn't want to cut anything. And again, I didn't know how to concentrate my stuff the way I do now. I write it very concentrated. I want you to hold it. You read my book, you read my works. I don't want you to just get it. I want you to see it as a piece of art, something to unravel as you go along. Something, hopefully, that you cherish, you know what I mean? And if I write about music, I'd like you to cherish it like you would the liner notes of an album, And that's my mental goal when I write about the science of music. Um, and even into the art of music, you know what I mean? Something that is as beautiful as the cover of an album, you know? And when I started to write in these magazines, I remember this some pieces I wrote for the Source. They found them too abstract, and they couldn't run them, and it paled in comparison to what I write now. So I never found a forum until, you know, I really started to build with my brother Paragon and Kevlar 7 of the Wisemen. Remembered Imperfection, R.I.P. My brother, two of the most gifted in their fields, and they just made this forum, premierhiphop.com, for me to share my thoughts. And now, you know, it's in book form. You know, now it's in book form. But many of the pieces in this book first ran through premierhiphop.com, and all of them are worthy of premierhiphop.com because they have that essence that I developed there, you know, that canvas, you know what I mean? That was my canvas for 180 moves, you know, the Biang Zing of Kung Fu that I could flip, you know, with the writing weapons that I was using. And with the essays from the Invisible Renaissance, as Filtered Real, it isn't an entire history of what I call the Invisible Renaissance, this decade of the 2010s. That's impossible. Not with the stuff I've written. This book is not even half of the things I've written. But I'll tell you this. The book, as I said, was inspired by me writing the reel of 2018, which I never published, though. I decided it ended up becoming the book. But I literally have extended my reel of 2000, whatever, right, that I write every year. And I extended it and branched it out into breaking down not only the music of 2018, but using it to go into all other years of the music and breaking down the trends of the music, the things that I've seen in the music, and the growth and development of all of the artists that have been involved, as many as I could put in the book, you know. Not every one is in there. I have like a major list of artists of the Invisible Renaissance that'll continue this renaissance, I feel. I think in editing, that was the hardest part. I couldn't get that to be defined, you know. I had to keep going back and adding names and stuff. And I'm sure a worthy, great MC, and, you know, I've probably left out. And that's the way it goes with lists. But with this book, it has the science of music as its core, but it has a lot of art and art. It has a lot of those poetic prose that catapult the pieces that I write, you know, that inspire them. Because often, the greater the work inspires me to write about it, the more I end up writing about it in an artistic fashion as well, in a creative way as well. And it just becomes a whole marathon of a back and forth between poetry and prose, between technical builds on the music, and then going into the creative, you know, and it just keeps going back and forth. But again, art on art has always been the joy, and I always like to recite a piece so that way we, you know, we have these. And November 6th, S.STREET Media is headlining an event. In fact, let me find it here. I think I saved the flyer here. Yeah, poetry and piff, right? And I'm one of the performers there, along with Brother Red, Good Look Seabrook, Meek Jafe, Crystal Snow Jordan, MS Sin City, right? Deshaun Sylvester L, and even more at the 5 Spots, you know, Soul Food at 459 Myrtle Avenue in Brooklyn. That's going to go down November 6th, you know, from 6 to 12 a.m. Entry's only $5, so it's definitely worth it. You know, it's a great spot, you know what I mean? Great atmosphere in there, you know. It's cleaned up like it was gentrified, but we give it that non-gentrified vibe, so you're going to love it. But let me tell you something. I'm gonna have some pieces that I read there I've never published before, and like one of them I have in my head I've only done once, and some from this book, The Filtered Reel, but also from my upcoming art and art book, which is gonna collect nearly all of the poetic prose and poetry that I've developed over the years, writing about all these artists' great work, But one piece though I'll read now in this segment, our regular segment of the Art and Art Recital I called it Scrolling. And it goes like this. The writer, a Rhodes carver of creative passages, articulate the culture when the beat's too loud for you. Alone with my trading card articles protected by old gold borders around these crinkled papers. The professional duty as a journalist, or better, a historian before its time cements rewinds, sharing the dreams of the gifted black, brown, and rugged. From their easel to my ink diesel, the revelations of purpose are the tales behind the beats. Justice steps past the poverty, 10 more than were ever given. You want to see the builds where I salute the kids at Gunsling? Dig my understanding into scrolls of growls from brethren from another alike town. Knowledge this. The brother of my brother is mine own. Family that protects its proper principles from the samples to the love that's ample. We then guts the government of notions, intentions, and illy inflections that punctuate policy. From the scripts of Ra, the blues of the Delta, and the Constitution of Bronze Nation, the amen to men's tenements were the amendments in the song sheets. Striding into Diggstown, from my eastern roots of Mecca, all to see these long-playered sights of insight. And finally, salute the kid. Peace to Salute the Kid of the Wiseman. He's still locked down, doing a long bid. Peace to Bronze Nazareth. Peace to the Wiseman, Illa Days, all those brothers. You know what I mean? June Mega. You know what I mean? This obviously was for a piece on Salute the Kid's album, Diggstown. And I got to say, off the head, Diggstown, the sample, the way he sampled, I think he sampled Frank on that. Right? And I'm musing out loud, though, because I don't want to sample snitch here badly as I already am right now. But Bronze Nazareth production on Diggstown is one of my favorites, and the way Salute rhymed on it. I think that's one of my favorite songs in this decade. You know what I mean? It's just it's a perfect song, man. And Bronze Nazareth is great at choruses, though. He's such a lyricist, and when he writes choruses, he compacts it, and he's in the vein that inspires me, because the MCs that have inspired me most are the concentrated writers. At the top there, Jizza, and Bronze Nazareth really is a concentrated writer. He puts so much beautification into every single line that it's just a joy to watch. And I haven't been here in a while doing the show, and we had a great guest the last time, Skank. So I haven't been talking about a lot of things, and some of these things I want to talk about. So it led to kind of this episode. But before I get into this episode, I want to throw this out there because I saw it and it was good. And I want to give some little quick reviews of certain things that I watch, I'm slow on others, I don't, like now I'm watching the Wu-Tang American Saga. So I have some quick thoughts about that. But I've only seen like 2 episodes. But a lot of people love a lot of it. I gotta tell you though, I don't. The first thing is that if you feel like the vibe of the Wu-Tang MC and the actor, I gotta tell you, with the limited amount of work there that I've seen, I'm not really feeling Dave East too much doing Method Man. It just looks a little robotic. I don't know. I'm gonna say this as a side note. Method Man style. I'm not talking about when these episodes take place. They take place before Wu-Tang blew up, so he was developing whatever. But Method Man style, I'm talking about everything. The way he moved, the way he slurred with all the gold in his teeth, the way he moved on stage, that you know, he has like this semi-rotation, this 180 rotation he does in his flow when he's on stage. Watch old clips of Method Man, 93, 94, where he was always wearing that two the you know, the same leather jacket they always wore. When he was wearing that leather, man, he had such soul. The vibe that Method Man had. And then I'm seeing Dave East. Is it Dave East playing Dave East? I don't. What's going on here? But I saw one of my brothers on the Facebook. He didn't like the way RZA was being portrayed. That RZA was being portrayed as like too naive as a kid and things like that. And if you really are a student of the Wu, not like my producer who's a real hater and stuff, you know, but if you're a real a student of the Wu, you end up being a student of the RZA. And if you see what the kid that's doing RZA, he has a very deep voice, and it's capturing RZA's deep voice in a deeper baritone, which is hard to do because, you know, the kid's baritone is crazy, right? So he can't really fix that. But he's doing it in a RZA pitch. But watch when the kid's character makes music and he's doing things like this, and the way he goes, yeah, yeah, you know, and he moves. He's doing that just like RZA. Watch documentary stuff with RZA, and they're in the studio. He's doing it exactly like RZA, you know. And RZA always talks about, and if you're really a RZA fan, and you're listening to Bobby Digital, and Bobby Digital was really supposed to be the development of the RZA as a youth, except he added like superpowers to it and all. And he's supposed to be RZA before he gets down to himself. A lot of the things that RZA says on those songs is Bobby Digital, especially in the Bobby Digital albums, the first three albums. The end of the albums are really the most powerful songs. He saved some of his greatest songs for the end of those first three albums, where they're introspective. They talk about the development of Bobby Digital into RZA the Man, right? When you listen to those songs and listen to RZA's interviews, then you understand what the kid is doing, and the way he's portraying RZA is really spot on. Is really spot on. The kid that's playing Raekwon will catch Raekwon's mannerisms every now and then, really to the T, but they haven't developed this character, and that has to do with the writing, not the actor. And Ghostface, the problem with Ghostface is that Ghostface has such dynamic old soul, like really old soul, that the hardcore gangster that the young brother that's portraying him is being done really well. And the writing for Ghostface's character is very is probably the most engaging part of the story. That's what's really thrusting the action of the story, his perspective. But the way Ghostface talks, the way he muses, you know, the way he watches things, the way he notices things when he speaks, he's not capturing it that. And I blame that not just on the actor, but really the writing. I don't think the writing's capturing that in the moment rough, rugged and raw gangster that he was back then, but also that introspective, soulful self. It's not able to balance that. So maybe later they might draw it out. I don't know, but those quick perspectives are there. Other quick perspectives about another thing I saw. I saw Hitsville, the Showtime documentary on Motown, and if you grew up, brothers my age, you know what I mean, they grew up on Motown because our elders were playing Motown, and the radio was always playing Motown as a standard. You know what I mean? It's standard black pop. And when I'm saying black pop, I mean it in all non-negative disregard that I usually have, right? But it was great to see how these songs were made. Great to see some of the stories behind it. It was very interesting to see the business model that he applied to making the music, because a lot of people don't know that Motown really sets a standard to uncovering the little nuances in production that allows a song to be a hit on the radio. Meaning, a song is played in the studio, the loudness of the drums, the loudness of the drum snare versus the bass line, the intensity of the kicks, versus the way the track itself all encompasses the room. All of these are important because Motown had such a skillful band, house band, and they had such a talented, eclectic band that was a lot of them were very deep into jazz, that they were able to get into these nuances. And because of the united goal that Barry Gordy set up in this in this assembly line structure that he was inspired by when he worked in the Detroit car factories, you don't really you really see how it was able to focus the house band into making the perfect formula to do that. And when they go through some of these songs, and Smokey and Holland Dozier Holland are quoting some of these lyrics, and you're reading the lyrics, I love these songs so much as a youth that I hadn't done this like I do hip hop. A lot of those 60s big hits where it was just a hit factory, I hadn't really looked at how gorgeous these lyrics are as just lyrics of love, like they're like Sufik, some of these lyrics, they're just gorgeous, like amazing, and they could be so simple and profound, like a lot of the stuff that they had Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin singing the Temptations, the Four Top songs, they seem so simple, but when you hear them, they really are profound. You know what I mean? And it shows that the lyricism, it was a place of lyricism, and not just the skill of the singer, but as expected because of everything Barry Gordy did and all of the beefs and and all of the hating he did on the development of the actual artist and the actual development of the album. Because let's not forget, the reason the 70s are the prime digging years, if you had to pick a decade, it is the best decade of music. And you can't say the 90s because the best music in the 90s is hip-hop, and it still is because of what it was sampling. So, like if you talk musically. So when we talk about the 70s, all the music was becoming album-oriented. It even became subgenres. Like in rock music, you have album-oriented rock. You know what I mean? People were working on the construction of a whole piece, and that was... I don't think it affected, and that what inspired Marvin was his development of the music as a musician. And even though they didn't really get into the genius of Marvin completely, and that sounds crazy because Smokey admitted What's Going On is the greatest album he's ever heard, and all this other stuff, and they sang the praises of the development of one of the greatest, I could say greatest, right? In this child prodigy you'll ever hear, Stevie Wonder, into making his own album oriented. And mind you, as a quick classic crates, every single album by Stevie Wonder in the 1970s is a must-have in a collection. It's must-have. There's no way of getting around it. If you're a decent, respectable soul collector, you want to be respected, you have every Stevie Wonder album in your collection from the 70s. If you love music and you love all things that go with the beauty of life and music, you get more of them. I think in the 70s, maybe, real quick, if you want to really nitpick, I know there's somebody out there, right, that might be nitpicking, right? I know my brothers like Sar and Karan. I know they bear witness. But if you're really nitpicking and you want to pick an album that you could let go of in the 70s from Stevie Wonder that you don't have to collect, I guess, would probably be Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, a soundtrack that very few people know about. But what's the hit song there? But Someone You Love actually comes from that double LP soundtrack. And it was for, I think it was for a documentary, because remember, the Secret Life of Plants is a book that was considered quackery. It was a science book considered quackery. It's really dope, though. It's really a great book, because they didn't really bear witness to the guy's experiments or the ones that he was quoting, but he was basically saying that plants are a living thing, you know? So a lot of the stuff that he wrote, though, is being found out today anyway. But maybe you get by with skipping that one. But there was this great scene. I think like the most... one of the great things about Marvin Gaye is when you learn about how his studio process and how he was able to use multiple tracks to record his voice as different styles of choruses, right? And then also the skill that he had in layering the tracks. You know, he's not the innovator of this, so... And if we talk about layering tracks, we could go from legends in all genres at these times, like from whether it be Miles Davis in jazz or it be Eddie Palmieri in salsa, because they were all layering. I'll even add Charles Mingus, Black Satan, the Sinner Lady, which is my favorite album from Charles Mingus. That one is a very, very layered, where tracks are being, you know, this piece recorded, and they're being thrown on top of each other. And it's the producer, the composer is actually putting together pieces, you know. So these are precursors to hip hop in the studio construction of a work, you know what I mean? That becomes into its peaks of hip hop, and also its lowest valleys of a lot of the 80s, 70s, late 70s disco, and really a lot of 80s R&B, you know. But when they show how that, you know, what's going on in that particular song was layered, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see the mastery. But I also was a little disappointed that the mastery of Marvin Gaye isn't delved into, because Let's Get It On and Why Want You are seminal. And this sounds crazy in soul music, which is all about love, but they're seminal and even revolutionary love albums. That's how powerful Marvin Gaye was, you know what I mean? Just, you know, hey, he's the GOAT, you know what I mean? He's the GOAT soul musician. And those three albums you have to have, but you really should have the entire canon of Marvin Gaye to see his progress. But if you're going to have a rule, all 70s albums from Marvin Gaye is where you start, you know? But still, the documentary is worth watching, you know, sans the Berry Gordy of, you know, fluff work that he put in there to leave out certain things. But it's great. It's great. Motown is the greatest powerhouse record label ever. You know what I mean? But speaking of that, over the last couple of weeks, things I haven't been able to build on because we had a great guest and we missed a show, wasn't able to record. You know, things happen, right? But I was thinking of one thing about the listener, and I call this is an extended media mutation segment, and it's called the listener. Why is this a media mutation? Because you, the listener, right, have been living off your damned cliches your whole listening life. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of cliches that we embrace as listeners of music that actually ruin the possibility of us ever really understanding music on a better level, you know? First off, let's talk about the perspectives on this side of the board of the journalist, you know, and how do they share? Do they share? And these are conversations I had during, you know, with artists and You know, really dope artist, King Arthur. That's an MC of MCs right there. No technical miscues, you know? It's one of those, you know, MCs. And he had asked this question about like and dislike, and, you know, the leeches really. You know, they ruin the journalism. They ruin the perspective about music because they put their own... They're really just putting up the people that they like. But a journalist that's writing about music can only really write about what he considers to be good music. You know what I mean? The minute that the journalist writes about music that he doesn't like he really doesn't like at all, he just sold out. That's what he did. He sold out. And that's really what the game is filled with. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many times I was at big magazines, little magazines, would-be startup magazines, and they're covering music that is forecasted to be popular. It's not even popular yet. It's forecasted to be popular. You know what I mean? And now, this is important, because in today's musical world of radio and all that and streams, the forecast of popular music is like the weather. You know, you check your weather on your phone. Like, I'm not talking about weather like 5 days from now, but like you want to know the weather like the next 3 hours. It's nearly always going to be right and exact on your phone, right? That's the forecast of popular music. They collect this trash, and then they say this trash is going to be hot. They know this for a fact because everything has been set up for it to be that way. So they know. But back in the day when I was starting out in the 90s, you had guys forecasting without really knowing that much. So you look more like a loser, a pathetic loser, forecasting some junk that wasn't going to be the next level-ish. You know what I mean? And so what is the ethics? What's the ethos? The way to go about that as a journalist? You got to write about what you like. You got to write against what you dislike. But it's all about the earth, wind, and fire. The reasons that you're here, right? The reasons that you write about these things. I was going to sing, but my producer, he didn't give me the nod. He wasn't really, so I just let it go. You know what I mean? My voice is a little hoarse and everything. But I want to sing that, right? Go, the reasons, right? The reasons, right? You come listen to the Power Right Show and you want to know what kind of music, right? I'm not here to convince you of the burgeoning career and the second win that Tekashi 6ix9ine will have once he gets out of jail. You know what I mean? And the grand possibilities, though, right? The grand possibilities. They could do an album with Rick Ross. They call it The Liar and the Snitch. It'd be, it'd be an incredible album. You know what I mean? Right? I don't know. Right? But the thing about it is this, right? And I say, the way I've always lived it, the reader, listener ought to know, they need to know the frame of reference and standard that you, the journalist, hold the music to. That's done by giving some favorites with reasons. You know, the earth, wind, and fire. You know what I'm saying? The earth, wind, and fire. You know what I mean? And today, most of them aren't really doing that. They have, what's developed is a false objectivity. You know what I mean? Where that's why you could put on let me throw the darts out there. You could log on to Hip Hop DX and you could see articles about Sean Price, but then you also see articles about Lil Blah Blah. You know what I mean? And the same writers will be writing about both of these guys. You know, and they'll be like, they treat it like it's different foods, you know, like it's vegetables. Like, if you like vegetables, Sean Price is really great for you. But if you like fruits, if you like apples, then Lil Blah Blah is the one that's for you. So they've muddied up the standards and principles to act like they're a market. And they just talk about the different food items on the shelves so that way you could know. But in real life, in all reality, they're only writing about the better music so they can uphold a smidgen of illusion of integrity. And then they're really writing about those big money makers. You know what I'm saying? The big money makers. No, and that's why the last of the Dark Ages artists, right? It doesn't matter how old Eminem and Jay-Z get, they're gonna milk them to high hell, because the last smidgen, the last wave of sellout pop MCs, not sellout pop rappers, sellout pop MCs that actually could rhyme. J and M are the last of a dying breed. They're the last of the sellouts there. You know what I mean? That have technical skill, that have gifts, that have actual lyricism. You know what I mean? Today a sellout is just like they're pre-sellout. They sell out from the womb to the tomb. You know what I mean? You go down the block and you say, "Hey, you like rap?" They've got marketing strategy embedded in them before they even saw a label, before they even thought about a studio and making a demo. You know? So that's why, like, when we talk about things, even in my book, The Filtered Real, I have a list, but I don't have numbers. I'm not putting things in orders and things like that. If we have goats and a goat list, it's better to have the concept of a goat candidacy, where you have the reasons why someone should be a goat. You realize that with the rigidness of a GOAT status, you limit all of the legendary MCs that are so abnormally excelled in 2 or 3 areas, and in about 5 or 6 areas they weren't even concerned with, you know? And so you miss out. And that's a problem. You know what I mean? But again, the perspective here. But now for the listener, here's what's missing too, right? The insight of the work that you are listening to, right? The artist is often always, it's funny, it links to something I was talking off air with my producer about the idea of the work of an artist being a capsule of a moment. And that capsule of a moment is often a growing insight. You know, it's growing. Like he was learning something. He might have been learning something, but the album finished before he learned all about that thing. So it might be incomplete, some of the ideas about specific subject matter. You know what I mean? I think about this and because I've been asked about this, one of my favorite albums this year is by the God Tidedale. His righteous name is Bornsey. Of the Heist Life crew, Sauce Heist, all those brothers. Tidedale's album is called School by the Apollo. It's inspired by the Nas line in the It Was Written album, and it's referencing a law school in Mecca, right? Where we, the gods and nerds, we build, right? Our first, home, our first school. But he named it that. And as a developing student, there are things that he says that are very near correct, things that he says that are right and exact. And they mix together. You know what I mean? And the whole point about art is the beauty of capturing that moment, though. You know what I mean? Because the way, what the God is now, as far as what he's learning, is already beyond that addictive capsule of music we have. So as a listener, because the music has become so fake, so insincere, we forget this idea of like the living artist making a living work. You know what I mean? Of a particular moment, right? So what happens is the faults that we develop as listeners, and I'm saying we because I'm included in this. We end up having a very limited palette. You know what I mean? We have a very limited palette. So what happens is, and this is why pop is such a dangerous idea. You know, my brother's always asking me, so against pop. When we talk about pop music, what happens is people just want to listen to music that immediately relates. This is good. This is good. It's fun. But it could be denatured because you could listen to music that relates on such a babyish level and then be inclusive, where now you feel like you're included with everyone because you're listening to a very limited music. Of a limited subject matter, you know what I mean? Make a pop song, trap song, but any type of pop rap song about chewing bubblegum. Yeah, I chewed bubblegum. Right? That sounds like a. I relate, man. It's real. It's real. So when you lower the amount, you know what I'm saying? When you lower the intensity, the specificity, the detail that goes into the song, it becomes more pop. You know what I mean? And it's why so many of the greatest lyricists that do go pop, it's because of other intangibles. You know, their comedic sense, their natural charisma, technical skill that just happens to be embraced. You know, because technical skills sometimes in hip hop are embraced, and it's all luck of the draw. It's all luck of the draw. You know, but we develop a very limited palette, meaning that we don't really know what to listen. We don't listen to different types of music. The hip hop listener now, I think, listens to less music from different genres than he ever did. And trust me, as a hip hop listener, your palette is weak if all the other genres that you actually do listen to are not older genres. If it only includes new stuff, you're not there yet. You know what I mean? You're not there. You know, nearly every single genre that we could study, their peaks are before this modern era. That's just the way it is. You know, I didn't make this music. I have just enjoyed it. It is what it is, you know. But also another thing, though, we end up starting to have a lack of educated delay as well. In other words, there's certain type of music that expands your palate. But because it's not pop or because it's not familiar to you, right, doesn't have the familiarities to you. Mind you, the familiarities aren't always your fault that you get addicted to. Even Marley Marl said that the consistency of a great producer is putting in certain familiarities that you always are known for again and again into the music. Marley Marl is notorious for that in his music. You know what I'm saying? So whether he was producing Biz Markie or years later LL Cool J, you can hear certain ideas of his drums that are consistent in his works, you know? And it gives us a lack of educated delay. What do I mean by that? We could learn about music and be educated about different types of music that is quality. Like, let's say you go and try to learn about jazz and you read about, I don't know, you learn about Blue Train and realize that that's an album that should be coveted by any jazz collector. John Coltrane's Blue Train, right? I didn't mention Love Supreme because if you're hip hop, you usually get into that album quickly. But Blue Train, it's real, you know, it's hard bop, you know, so, and it's raw. And some people don't, you know, always get into it though. It's not filled with like ballads, you know, the easiest and most lush thing, gorgeous thing about soul, whether it's soul music or blues or jazz, it's the ballad, you know what I mean? Right? It's the easiest thing to get into of a profound nature, but it is easy to get into. Blue Train isn't really filled with that, you know? If I remember, it might have like one, right? Not really sure. I gotta go back myself, right? Or any John Coltrane album that isn't Love Supreme, Giant Steps, whatever, right? He has tons of classics. But let's say you go listen to that album and it doesn't really hit you, like you're not really into it. You heard Love Supreme and it's not like Love Supreme. You know what I'm saying? And John Coltrane's a good example because you could say you're a John Coltrane fan. You've got to be a fan of John Coltrane, the player, or realize that you're very eclectic, because if you're saying you're a John Coltrane fan because of his albums have very little consistency. They go through different time periods. The same certainly holds true for Miles Davis, right? You'd have to be picking a time period. And we lack that educated delay to hear something that we have learned of that is of a high quality, but isn't really adhering to us, not really feeling it at the moment. We don't do that anymore. I remember back in the 90s, we used to always hear albums and say, listen, he's dope, but I'm not feeling him like that. But you hold that record for a long time because you know you're supposed to, right? You know you're kind of supposed to. So like some brothers loved Cuban Links, but they couldn't get into Liquid Swords. And we're like, yo, my man, you need to hold this record longer. And we're like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to keep messing with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to keep messing with it to see if I like it, though. You know what I mean? Just like some people, they fronted on Lauryn Hill's Miseducation. Because it's a very different record. They were like, yo, it's not hip-hop, it's R&B. You know what I mean? But I'm going to get into that really quick, too, now, right? I'll go back into that later. We have time. But also, too, we never can have a lack of idealism when we discuss black music, especially hip-hop. You know what I mean? A lot has been said, and I'll probably get into this in a whole other episode about the female, you know what I'm saying, in hip-hop. But and female MCs, and you know, definitely sparked by the hot takes that Lord Jamal keeps throwing out there. You know what I mean? And sometimes the reason they're hot takes is because they're sloppy. You know what I'm saying? They're sloppy. You know, they're hot, so he's dropping them on the floor, and they're breaking into a lot of pieces. And some of them are assumptions of things. You know, like when he says that hip hop was for men and R&B is for females. See, we forget about the idealism things. Sometimes the way things go aren't always the way they were meant to be. And the reason I say that is, well, Sunyas, if Lord Jamal said that hip hop is men and R&B is female, that kind of played out the way it was. But see, it didn't play out because of choice. The labels were affecting that heavily. So there's outside factors that affect that and mutate that. So it's not, when he says that, it makes it look like a natural development. It wasn't, though. It was completely skewed. It was completely flawed. You know what I mean? Just like many aspects of hip hop music from its creation are flawed the minute the minute songs are recorded. I mean, what's the first record that really blew up hip hop? There's a Bite, right? Sugar Hill Gang, Biters. You know, so this whole thing is affected by outside forces negatively. So you have to have an idealism when you talk about what hip hop ought to be. You know, what hip hop ought to be is not necessarily something that is just for men. You know? Was it really meant like that? Like we're saying, listen, we made these records talking to brothers and stuff, but was it really made to just do that? I don't think so. You know what I mean? And by the way, look, to conclude the show, since we were talking about all these misnomers, and since it was in my head, Lauryn Hill's Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, that's a hip-hop album. When Lauryn Hill gets on the mic and raps and sings, she's not doing anything different than Cold Crush Brothers was doing. She's mastering all of the aspects that make you a master of ceremonies. You got one brother or one sister that just raps and she goes on stage, and then Lauryn Hill comes after and totally bodies her because she can sing, she can rap, she can go back to singing. She's mastered the mic. She's a mic controller. She's a better MC than you. She can do more things than you. That's MCing. Right? She's MCing. You want her to rap the lyrics? She can harmonize them. She can sing you the chorus, though. She could do all that. That's MCing. She out-MC'd everybody. You know what I mean? You know, that was pretty much it. But we're going to have I'm still developing it. And there's a lot of albums. I didn't even get to go into all these albums, though. You know what I mean? I just heard my brother G Huff and Lena Jackson's album. And it was very dope. Let me quickly get the name of that. Yeah, Grace and Alchemy. Such a dope name. It's on Bandcamp. If you do a search, G.Huff, Huff, Lena Jackson, Lena Jackson, Grace and Alchemy. Dope album. I have some thoughts on it. We'll share it next time I get to talk. But until that next time, there'll be a lot more stories to tell like that one. Writings to recite and records to rewind and reminisce like my brother G Huff. Until then, I'm your host, Sunni Azala, a.k.a. S.STREET Low. Check out next week. We'll be here Friday, October 11th, release of my book, Filtered Real, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. Come get a copy, right? Put that paper in my hand, the cream, right? And as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.